Hi, I'm Nicholas Hersh, Music Director of your Modesto Symphony Orchestra. I'm here today with Daniel Afonso Jr., the Chorus Director of our Modesto Symphony Chorus, because we are doing a rare symphony that involves chorus, and that is, of course, Beethoven's famous Ninth Symphony. Now, Daniel, when you heard, probably around maybe even this time last year, that we were going to do Beethoven 9, what was the first thought that went through your head?
Can I give you the second thought?
Sure.
No, the first thought is always excitement, but it's always a little bit of fear because it's such a demanding work for the chorus. You know, the chorus doesn't sing a lot. It sings only in the last movement, but what it does sing is very demanding. So I knew it would be kind of a fun year, a fun season for the chorus because we get to just get our teeth into this, you know. But then there is also, you know, the fact that the music is very intense, it's very high, and it's very loud for most of it.
It wouldn't be Beethoven if it weren't intense, after all, right?
Correct, yeah.
I mean, for me, I always thought that Beethoven was, I mean, one of the genius composers for instrumental music. His vocal music, while it's there, is not nearly as pervasive, you might say.
Yeah, I think I agree with that to a certain extent, really, because, like, for example, the music that he wrote around, or the vocal music that he wrote around the time that he wrote the Ninth Symphony, that some people refer to as like the third compositional period, is really demanding for the chorus. It's very virtuosistic, like the Mass in D, you know, Missa Solemnis.
Right.
I think the Mass in D is probably one of the most demanding choral works for, you know, ever written, period. It's just so intense. And I think Beethoven's Ninth is kind of a good parallel to it.
Yeah, it fits right in, and that's an important thing that you mentioned, that this piece, Beethoven's Ninth, is sort of the culmination of this kind of choral period. Right. He had taken this break after writing his Eighth Symphony and started to foray more into, as you say, these masses. He wrote some of his late piano sonatas, and then it took him maybe 5 or 6 more years again to write this symphony. And it was an interesting thing at the time in Vienna, as I recall, there was the sort of Italian invasion in musical taste. The whole demand for music was this kind of operatic, very, very Rossini-like style. And then there was this sort of counter demand, I think, at one point, for a return to the more traditional Viennese roots for which Beethoven was very, very known. So he then comes to the table with this massive symphony. And as you mentioned, it starts with not the chorus. The chorus doesn't get to sing until almost basically the last minute, but then they have to sing for like 20 straight minutes or something like that, right?
Yep, exactly.
But you have this journey from that's only in the orchestra in the first 3 movements of the piece that starts with this sort of low rumble. Almost as if there's no music to actually begin with, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and it starts in this kind of fury, this D minor fury, and then in the second movement you get almost a sense of battle, of violence with these timpani hits and very, very visceral playing. Then finally things quiet down for a minute in the third movement when just lush harmony takes over and lush melody takes over for a minute. And then, even before the chorus starts to sing, Beethoven takes us through everything that we just heard again
yes.
at the beginning of the fourth movement.
Brings the themes back, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's sort of when we finally reach the chorus's entrance, it's the end of this long journey that could be a symphony of itself, but then there's this choral tag. But then what do we sing about?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think that Schiller text, that the poem that he used, it was something that he had been looking at for a few years. Like, it's not, when he finally uses it for the symphony, he had already been considering, you know, to write that. And it's really kind of an interesting text also, because it's basically, you know, a call to unity and people to come together and celebrate different things, but you know, the baritone comes in, Freud, you know, it starts saying, "Oh, friends, we have been making music in a certain way, and I want to call people in and let's think about music differently. Let's think about music that unites us, that celebrates, fraternity and unity and, and brotherhood. And so I think in that sense, even more so, the kind of the adding of the chorus to it kind of makes complete sense, right? It's just kind of, all right, we were trying to kind of bring two forces that up to that point had not collaborated as much and as intensely. And the other thing is he brings the chorus in and treats the chorus, as another, I wouldn't say an instrument because he has a kind of an instrumental writing that kind of started way back in the Baroque, even Bach wrote some bass lines that were impossible to be sung. This was meant for a cello. It was not meant, but we're going to put some words here, and as long as there's a cello playing.
I played some of those lines on cello, accompanying singers who have to have a heck of a time trying to play along.
Exactly.
And I say play along quite literally.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but then when you get to Beethoven, it's several, 150 years later or more, and he's already just kind of taking that to a different level. The instruments are playing much, The instruments have developed also. They have more power. They have more, virtuosos can play better. And so the demand is even higher for the chorus, And so I think when we come in with this call of unity and brotherhood and all of that, I think that is a big celebration in some moment, particularly in the time we're living right now.
Absolutely.
What's going on in the world and so much division. But I think it's a good moment just to kind of unite the forces and bring everybody together. I almost feel like the most human part of the whole thing is that text. I think that's kind of that call. And is something that we really need to stop and listen and figure out, how can we do this together?
That's an interesting point.
Despite the difficulty of it all,
And it's an interesting point too that you mentioned. The baritone comes in with this statement: "Let us sing let us play, let us hear something different." And the difference is both that the style of music changes, but the mere fact that we have a text to begin with, that we have words that are expressing all these things, unity, joy, and the very fact that we're not playing instruments anymore, that we're actually using our voices together, that ties everything together. But for this concert, we thought that it would be interesting to pair it with two additional pieces. One to start off the program, which is Arvo Pärt's Fratra, and that's an instrumental piece that is very harmonically driven. It's very meditative, although it connects to Beethoven simply by the fact that the name Fratra means brothers. One of the very things that Schiller is
fraternity
having us singing about. And then we have another piece on this program that uses our friends the chorus in an interesting way. Chorus acapella, a setting of a Bible verse by Amy Beach, an American composer who lived at the beginning of the 20th century. And it's this, I find it just gorgeous writing. How is it to sing?
It's a great piece to sing. I think as most a cappella piece music that has no instrumental accompaniment, just for voices, one of the challenges is just be perfectly in tune, stay on pitch, and all of that, which already requires good musicianship from the singers and all of that. But I think one of the fun things for us is that we rarely sing music in English in the classical concert because we do the major works.
Beethoven 9, of course, being in German, in his native German.
We are performing Beethoven's 9th in the original German, and we often perform in Latin or, So this time, I think in all the years the chorus has done major works with the symphony. The only major work that we've done in English was a C Symphony, like the Vaughan Williams a few years ago. It is kind of refreshing to sing something in a language that everybody feels very comfortable with. On the other hand, it does bring the challenge,
English is a hard language to sing in.
English is a hard language to sing in, We're singing in Latin, we have 5, 6 vowels, We go to English, we have 12.
And diphthongs.
And, don't even get me started. So there is a challenge with the diction side of it, and I think because everybody speaks English, there is, it's easy for them to think that they're going to sing in English the same way they speak English, but we have to make adjustments because of, where the notes fit and the words we're singing and the phrasing. So we have to work slightly different, but the chorus loves that. It's a very, it's a very experienced chorus and a lot of people who really enjoy singing. The vast majority of the singers don't have any sort of formal training in music. But many of them are very experienced choral singers who've been singing, some of it since they were children. So they're excited about the music so much, they enjoy that so much that they're willing, to do whatever it takes to present, get a good performance and work hard, as you saw like last night in rehearsal.
Indeed, yeah.
So I think everybody's really, really excited about this program. The other thing I think most people don't realize, is that when we do sing something as challenging and demanding as this, like intense, long, loud, high, right? The other challenge that comes is like when we have to do several performances in a row.
Of course.
So it's like 4 big chunks of singing, sequence, particularly on Friday when they do 2 back to back, So they have to stay healthy. They have to pace themselves. But they love it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love working with this chorus is that everybody who is there wants to be there.
Of course.
They have a passion for choral music and for singing. And so they really always give their all. And I think we're on the way to a really stellar performance.
And I just can't wait until that last, those last 2 bars of choral music, where it all comes to a T. More high A's for everybody, but it's just a magnificent, spine-tingling, goosebump-raising moment when you have all the instruments of the orchestra playing in these fast-moving scales and the chorus singing their hearts out at the end on these last Götterfunken, God's spark, joy, daughter of Elysium. It's just one of the most incredible moments to experience as a performing musician, and certainly as an audience member to experience live. So we hope that you'll join us at the Gallo Center on May 10th and 11th to hear the Modesto Symphony and the Modesto Symphony Chorus play and perform Beethoven's phenomenal, magnificent 9th Symphony. See you there.